It was all set. A consensus had been reached. The Baltimore Ravens, were planning to select Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round with the 141st overall selection. But when he found out, he got word back to the Ravens that he preferred not to go to a place where he would be competing and backing up Lamar Jackson. He wanted to be in a place that he could play. And so when the Ravens got that message, they pivoted, went a different direction with the 141st overall selection.
The NFL media cycle has officially been hijacked, and the name doing the hijacking is Shedeur Sanders.
Rumors are flying that Shedeur Sanders could be on the move to the Cincinnati Bengals.
What should have been a week about game results, playoff races, and quarterback injuries has spiraled into a nonstop conversation about a player who didn't even take a snap. Two separate storylines from two different cities have collided into one headline, and both of them somehow center on Shedeur Sanders. First, reports surfaced that Shedeur had made it clear to the Baltimore Ravens during the draft process that he did not want them to select him. The reasoning, according to Adam Schefter's report, was that he had no interest in sitting behind Lamar Jackson. That one sentence was all it took to light the NFL world on fire.
Does it make sense to you, Randy, for him to say, Lamar's there, he's going to be there for a decade, it's never a place I'm going to get a chance to play? Do you think it's a sensible choice?
Let me piggyback off of Teddy. You talk about Lamar Jackson's going to be probably retired with this organization. So if the backup does get in, he's in for garbage time. So I can see why Shedeur Sanders made that decision. I want to go compete for a job and get out there and play as a rookie.
Yeah.
Analysts questioned his maturity, debated whether he was too outspoken for a rookie, and wondered aloud if Shedeur had already overstepped his place before earning a spot in the league. The reaction in Baltimore was instant. Instead of celebrating a dominant Ravens performance, the conversation shifted entirely. Baltimore demolished the Cleveland Browns, winning 41-17 in one of the most complete games of the year. Lamar Jackson put on a show, the defense was suffocating, and Joe Flacco's much-hyped return to Baltimore was nothing short of disastrous. By all accounts, the story should have been about the Ravens' statement win and the Browns' collapse, but it wasn't. The moment Schefter's report dropped, every major outlet turned its focus to Shedeur Sanders.
I think this is insane, right? Like, if this is true, I think this is crazy, right? At this point, you're in the 5th round. I understand you had higher hopes, but you've dropped to the 5th round, and you're thinking about being a starting quarterback the next year. I think this is incredibly short-sighted. Like, if you're in this situation, you want to go to an organization that is going to develop you.
Suddenly, the headlines weren't about Lamar or Flacco. They were about a rookie quarterback who wasn't even in uniform. Even when Ravens quarterback Tyler Huntley was asked about the situation, his response didn't stick.
Playing with the Browns for briefly, you had a chance to be around Shedeur. So I'm just curious, like, what did you learn about him during that time period?
No, he's a great dude, definitely what the media, try to, it's always two different sides of the story or whatever. I don't even know, but like him as a dude, to meet him, cool cat, he's good. Like, he got his head on right, and then he got a bright future ahead of him, and I just wish nothing but the best.
Huntley spoke highly of Shedeur, calling him a great dude with his head on straight, someone destined for a bright future. It was a classy defense of a younger player, the kind of respect you'd expect from someone inside the league. But that wasn't what the media ran with. The soundbite that got replayed and recycled was the idea that Shedeur refused to back up Lamar Jackson. That one storyline eclipsed everything else. Instead of headlines about Baltimore's playoff momentum, the conversation became whether Shedeur Sanders was already too big for his own good. Before that storm could even die down, another bombshell dropped out of Cincinnati. Joe Burrow, the face of the Bengals and one of the league's brightest young stars, had suffered a serious turf toe injury.
Story of the day, obviously. Joe Burrow has a turf toe injury that will require surgery. He will be sidelined for a minimum of 3 months. Typically, this is a 12 to 14-week recovery period from an injury like that. That would mean that if it was best case, the soonest he could be ready, as much as he might push, would be December 15th, and it very well could be into the new year before he's ready again. Let's see if the Bengals and Jake Browning, their new quarterback, can keep them afloat until then. But Joe Burrow went down yesterday.
The medical update was brutal. Burrow would require surgery, and the timeline for recovery was a minimum of 3 months, possibly longer depending on how quickly the swelling subsided. That meant the earliest possible return would be mid-December, with the more likely outcome pushing into the new year. For a Bengals team built around his arm, it was a devastating blow. Cincinnati named Jake Browning as the starter moving forward, but almost immediately the conversation was hijacked again. The name that started trending wasn't Jake Browning, it wasn't a list of veteran backups. It wasn't even another star quarterback around the league, it was Shedeur Sanders. The narrative shifted in an instant. Could the Bengals make a bold move and bring in Shedeur? Would it make sense to trade for him as insurance while Burrow recovered? Was Shedeur the hidden solution that could keep Cincinnati afloat in the playoff hunt? Speculation exploded. Shedeur Sanders to the Bengals became a real talking point across television panels and online debates. And then the conversation took another turn. Some began suggesting that if the Bengals ignored Shedeur, if they looked elsewhere for quarterback depth, it would be proof of something bigger. Words like collusion started getting thrown around. The theory was simple. The NFL and its teams were deliberately avoiding Shedeur Sanders, keeping him out of opportunities, even when the situation made perfect sense. A straightforward injury report had transformed into yet another Shedeur-centered controversy, with conspiracy theories now attached to his name. What we are seeing is a pattern. In Baltimore, Shedeur became the distraction from one of the Ravens' best performances of the season. In Cincinnati, Shedeur became the so-called savior before the Bengals even played a single snap without Joe Burrow. 2 different teams, 2 different storylines, and the same exact result. Shedeur Sanders turned into the headline while the real story faded into the background. And here's the reality. Shedeur hasn't thrown a pass in these games. He hasn't stepped under center. Yet he is being positioned as the focal point of debates that should have nothing to do with him. To some, this is proof of his magnetic star power, the inevitability of his rise. To others, it's evidence of media obsession, of a league desperate to create controversy even where it doesn't exist. Whatever side you fall on, the outcome is undeniable. Shedeur Sanders is the most talked about player in football right now, and he hasn't even played. This isn't about what happened on the field. This is about how the NFL media machine operates. Shedeur has become both the scapegoat and the solution, depending on what drives the most engagement. One week he is framed as the arrogant rookie who wouldn't back up Lamar Jackson. The next week he is pitched as the savior who could keep Cincinnati's playoff hopes alive. In one breath he's too entitled, in the next he's not being given enough opportunity. That's the contradiction of the Shedeur Sanders narrative. And let's not forget Shedeur's own response. When asked about the Ravens report, he didn't lash out. He didn't give the media more ammunition. His answer was calm and focused. He said, "I'm focused on the now. I don't really talk about the past, and whatever happened in the past, it is what it island. I'm more focused on this game and figuring out how to move forward." That was the perfect response, professional and level-headed. But notice how quickly that answer disappeared from the headlines. The story that stuck wasn't Shedeur's poise. It was the controversy. That's the cycle he's trapped in. Now with Burrow out, the Bengals staring at a long stretch without their star quarterback, the same cycle has kicked up again. Instead of examining whether Jake Browning can manage the offense, instead of discussing how Cincinnati's playoff chances shift without Burrow, the coverage is dominated by the hypothetical of Shedeur Sanders. Could they trade for him? Should they trade for him? If they don't, is the league deliberately holding him back? None of these questions reflect what actually happened on the field, but they've become the entire conversation anyway. This is what happens when a player becomes larger than the game. Shedeur Sanders has crossed that threshold before even getting his chance to prove himself at the professional level. Every week, every storyline somehow circles back to his name. Whether it's a blowout win in Baltimore or an injury crisis in Cincinnati, the one thing the media can agree on is that Shedeur Sanders drives the headlines. And once a player becomes the headline, the facts start to matter less than the narrative. For the Ravens, it means their biggest win of the season was overshadowed. For the Bengals, it means the focus on Burrow's health has already been drowned out. For Shedeur himself, it means his image is being built and battled over before he even steps onto the NFL field. The hype is there, the skepticism is there, the controversy is there. And it's all happening without him throwing a single pass. So what does this all mean moving forward? It means that Shedeur Sanders is already the most polarizing figure in the NFL. It means that every time a quarterback struggles, every time a team suffers an injury, every time there's a narrative hole to fill, his name is going to be dragged into it. It means that whether you think he's being overhyped or unfairly targeted, you cannot escape the fact that the NFL and its media ecosystem have made him the story. In Baltimore, he was the rookie who supposedly refused to back up Lamar Jackson. In Cincinnati, he's the rumored replacement for Joe Burrow. In both cases, the details almost don't matter. What matters is that Shedeur Sanders' name was attached, and that was enough to dominate the conversation. That's how powerful his presence already island. That's how much of a magnet he's become. And here's the chilling part for the rest of the league. If this is how loud the conversation is when Shedeur isn't even playing, what will it look like the moment he is? If the media is already this obsessed, already this fixated, then the hype, the scrutiny, and the controversy are only going to grow louder. The NFL may have tried to focus on Lamar's brilliance or Burrow's absence, but at the end of the day, those stories were overshadowed by one name: Shedeur Sanders.